Hello and welcome back to Build Proposal Lab at DP Summit 2024. And now I have two guests with me, which is very exciting. You're the first two-person interview of the conference.
Great. Excellent.
Phil, thank you, and John, thank you. Thank you both for coming. You're both with NetApp.
That's right.
And you were kind enough to share with us your journey at NetApp towards developer productivity engineering.
Right. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit of your teams, what are you working on, and how do you improve the lives of developers?
Okay. Yeah. You want to start?
Hey,
You can
don't
start. Go ahead.
forget to keep the microphone close so we will get some sound.
Awesome. Okay, so we're both part of the engineering and tools services team, and our whole goal is to try to figure out how to make developers more productive. And we focus on ONTAP, which is kind of one of NetApp's very big product, and it's in a large mono repo. It's been around for about 25 years, and so we've got a lot of tools that have grown up with the product itself. And so part of what we're trying to do is to modernize stuff and pick up what the best practices that we've seen around from other companies and adapt them for us. So a lot of it is trying to unlearn some of the things that we've done and try to learn the best practices and adopt them.
Yep.
So
Yeah, so my team's in charge of everything from compiler toolchain, from build, CI/CD, debugging. We sell products, right? We also have SaaS as a service, but most of our customers buy our products. So we have like reservation systems that we do. I think a lot of the people here, they're more SaaS offerings, right? We can't go as quick as them, right? Because they're enterprise customers, they're not upgrading their data source all the time. But yeah, we're really here because last year we saw some VODs from this conference, and we were like, Phil and I, wow, a bunch of other us were like really like, wow, let's go talk to some other folks, right? Because they have the same problems, right? And so that journey last year, I started looking at this last year of like, okay, space frameworks, Dora, things like that, DevX, right? And so I started looking at more of the objective metrics. And what happened was, I found that like in my new role, we weren't talking to engineers. So basically I went down the space route with satisfaction, right? And so it's been good to come here and actually see like every presentation we've seen here has been a survey, right?
This is exactly what I wanted to start asking questions. The first question that I wanted to ask is, how do you know what's broken or doesn't work or requires improvement?
Yeah, most of the time it's users complaining, right? Which we thought was backwards. We have KPIs, we have metrics, right? We could do better observability, right? But we have SRE practices that we do. But what we really wanted to know was like, how is the satisfaction of developers? So we started to ask them, right? And so we have some forums to get feedback. We do some interviews occasionally, right? We're talking about, should we do kind of daily, what are they, like journals, things like that? But most of the time, unfortunately, is users coming to us and complaining about issues, right? Which we're looking to improve on.
It's a way to get feedback, right? I mean, obviously it's better when you're proactive, but in the end of the day, people are complaining about stuff is absolutely normal. The question is, what do you do with that?
What we do with that? Well, we have to put everything into actions, right?
Exactly.
Right, and that's where we come in and we actually know we have resources where to invest. We just need to, invest them in the right places, right? So we are building those practices into kind of our everyday kind of, engineering kind of culture, right? And changing that culture, basically be more proactive. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, do you want to give me some examples of, for example, your success story of how everything was terrible?
So our first survey that we did, we had like 40 questions. We tried to keep it below 20 minutes, which we were successful with. But we were expecting to come out of this, okay, slow build times, right? Slow CI/CD pipeline. Okay, the system's, flaky unit tests, right? But you know what the first one was? Documentation. So we actually.
I was betting on meetings.
Meetings?
Yeah.
Well, meetings is a part of it too. So we are focused more on engineering, right? And so meetings was something that people talked about, but documentation was by far 200% more of an issue that we had no idea about, right? And so what we've been doing is we found that we had too many code repositories, right? With that information, too many platforms that were stale, things that have been updated for like a decade, right? NetApp is an older company, right? So we actually invested in basically improving those things and cleaning up, kind of draining. We like to call it draining the swamp a lot, right? So we were draining the swamp.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. That's a great example of something that you didn't expect to be an issue, and it wasn't. Well, there are some engineering solutions on how do you maintain your documentation up to speed, but it's mostly just a managerial will of investing in something that was neglected for a long time.
Right, and one of the things too from the satisfaction, the survey is like we asked about code review velocity. Well, turns out most people are satisfied with their code review velocity, but when you look at the data, it doesn't match up to best practices, right? With the Googles, the Metas, the Netflixes, like we were far behind, and so what we found was people don't know how much more productive they could be. So we are actually investing in some like Gen AI kind of review bot capabilities, right, to improve that.
Oh, this is fascinating. So what we're saying is that yes, it's important to ask the developers, but maybe they don't even know how bad they have it, and that it can be improved.
Right.
So it has to be some kind of a combination of those surveys with what? With like a competitive analysis of what's going on in the industry.
Right. Yep.
And I'll just say that, I mean, that's one of the things why it's so enlightening to come here and see what other people are doing, right? Because it's just like you say, like maybe they have to do 10 steps and they're complaining about step 2, but if you can actually design a tool that leapfrogs over all of that so they don't actually have to do step 2, then they're not going to complain about it anymore. Do you know what I mean? If something can turn into a pull request that does it on their behalf, then, well, guess what? They're not going to maybe even care if it takes a little bit longer than normally when they have to sit at the keyboard and actually type it. So that's kind of the stuff that we're looking for, the stuff that will leap us much farther ahead of where we are today with that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This is fascinating. And the third pillar of those metrics, so we have the surveys and we have the competitive kind of landscape, and the third will be like just numbers that you know that are bad. Right, stuff like build time.
Yep.
You don't need developers to tell you, hey, build times, slow builds are bad, and you don't need to hear Meta saying that slow builds are bad because you know that they're bad.
Right. Yes.
So how do you measure those? How do you start building this observability into the environment that creates your production environment?
Well, I think one of the things we're trying to do is centralize more of where we store those metrics, right? Because we have Grafana reports, we have Power BI, we have Tableau, we have things all over the board. But instead of having like a dashboard, like there was a talk today about, don't do the productivity dashboards, right? Do something that's more reactive, right? And so we're just taking the next step to do that. Right now, unfortunately, it's someone having to look at some of those metrics and make the determinations, whether that's on a weekly basis, daily basis, quarterly basis. We're doing some of that too, but we're trying to be a lot more proactive in that space. That's what we're trying to do.
And I'll say that so far, kind of, we look at the stuff in aggregate, right? So we might find when something's grossly wrong with the system, like the averages are going up, or the null builds are taking too long, or tests are being flaky or intermittent. But really, one of the things that we kind of see time and again here is people are able to focus in on certain developers and walk in their shoes and look at their experiences in order to figure out, oh, this is what they're really hitting, and sometimes that reveals a different class of problems than if you just look at the overall averages in times, like that, right?
Yeah, no, this is great. Phil, John, thank you very much. That was very, very enlightening and very, very useful. And for you folks, if you're just starting on this journey, there is a lot of wisdom and how to learn what to do. Come to DP Summit would be one advice.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Of course, it's been great.
For sure. And as we said, ask your developers, look on what other folks in the industry are doing, just measure what makes sense and should be measured.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you all folks, stay tuned for more episodes of the Build Version Lab at DP Summit.